On this Thursday edition of Locked On Grizzlies, Adrian Wojnarowski of ESPN has called it a reporting career. He's putting down his cell phone finally after all these years. Damichael Cole and I are going to reflect on our favorite Grizzlies Woj bombs. We're going to talk about another pretty iconic NBA personality who is really underestimating Memphis this coming season. We're going to finish out this episode with some previews of this new look offense that everybody's talking about. This is Locked On Grizzlies. Let's lock in.
You are Locked On Grizzlies, your daily Memphis Grizzlies podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
This is Locked On Grizzlies. This is a Thursday edition of the podcast, and I am Joe Mullinax, one of your hosts. It's always a good day when I get to say that because that means I think this is the third show in a row, partner. We must be getting close to the season
roll.
Here.
Hey, it's that time, Joe. We got to crank up. We got to get back in form. Yeah.
Co-host Damichael Cole, the commercial appeal there in Memphis, Tennessee, Memphis Grizzlies beat writer, award-winning Memphis Grizzlies beat writer for that publication. Make sure you're following Damichael on X at Damichael C. Follow me on X at Joe Mullinax, and make sure you're checking out the show each and every time an episode drops. We are free and available wherever you get podcasts as proud members of the Locked On Podcast Network. Again, your team each and every day. Like, comment, rate, review, subscribe. Over on YouTube, we had another good day over on YouTube. Folks being very kind to us on YouTube right now. It's kind of strange for me. I'm not going to lie. People love Damichael, right? Understandably so. I want to stress that. People think I'm being silly or I'm being sarcastic. Damichael Cole's phenomenal, and you should love him unconditionally. Whenever I get complimented, it freaks me out a little bit. I'm just not used to that in my decade plus.
I'm telling you, the people love you too, Joe. You underestimate yourself. I'm telling you, a lot of the viewers on here can attest for me. I've seen some of them in person at games or wherever the place may be, and they'll say, "Oh, how's Joe doing?" and things like that. Like, the people love you, Joe.
Maybe it's because I finally gave up acting like I had hair, and I just shaved it off. And maybe people can appreciate me and think I'm more honest now that I'm bald. But thank you, however you take in the show. If you check us out on YouTube, thank you. Check us out on Apple, Spotify, Amazon, literally anywhere you can get a podcast. Make sure you're making Locked On Grizzlies a part of your NBA and Memphis Grizzlies content consumption. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Damichael, it was a newsworthy day yesterday on NBA Twitter and in the NBA media sphere. Not because of any trades or not because of any signings, but because the guy who has become famous for breaking the news of such transactions has decided to call it a career. Adrian Wojnarowski of ESPN, literally been doing this type of work for 30-plus years. He's been at ESPN for 7 years, was at Yahoo Sports, if I recall correctly, for a time before that. He has become the Adam Schefter, right? You have Adam Schefter on the NFL side in terms of news breaking. He's that for the NBA, Adrian Wojnarowski is. And he has called it a career. He's going back to his roots, going back to his school, St. Bonaventure. These schools, because of NIL and all that stuff, they're starting these GM roles, and he's going to be that for the Bonnies basketball program, which I know he's very passionate about. So that's really cool. Congratulations to Woj. But it got me thinking, Damichael, because a lot of people in my line of work as a blogger and a podcaster, a lot of folks were posting on X like funny memes and GIFs of them ending their time following Wojnarowski or having Woj notifications on, like the Shawn Michaels, Ric Flair super kick. That's one of my personal favorites as a wrestling fan. I'm sorry, I love you.
I love you. And
then just a kick straight to the face. Yeah. That's kind of how I feel as I prepare to. I'm not ready to do it yet. It's still too new. It's still too fresh. I'm not ready to unfollow Woj just yet. But it did get me thinking, and it got us thinking about our favorite Memphis Grizzlies Woj bombs. And if it's okay, partner, I'd like to go first on this. Shoot. Because there's one that stands out in my memory for a variety of reasons, and it's the Mike Conley contract extension Woj bomb. When Mike, for a very brief period of time, I want to stress that, it was like 2 weeks. It was the summer of 2016 when money was free-flowing, the big new TV deal, and the lack of a standardized raise made it so almost every team in the NBA had max contract money. It was a good summer to be a free agent. And Mike Conley got like a 5-year, $150-some million. he was the highest paid guy in the history of the NBA, again, for like 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And I thought that was really cool because here's the small market Memphis Grizzlies getting this attention, getting this level of history kind of shown on them by this big time reporter. But I also remember it because of the subsequent Woj bombs of how that signing was supposed to begin the next era after Grit and Grind, that re-signing. And then you added Chandler Parsons, which was very anticlimactic by the end. Then you fast forward a couple of years and you trade a Marc Gasol and you see him go to Toronto and win a championship. And all the ways that the Grizzlies kind of stumbled after that stand out in my memory as well. From that highest of highs, Mike Conley, this is going to be the leader of this new era of Grizzlies basketball, to the trade that essentially reset and restarted the organization. You know, Woj was there for the highest of highs and the lowest of lows when it comes to the Memphis Grizzlies towards the end of Grit and Grind. And, you know, that time when I was over at Grizzly Bear Blues, when I was site manager, you know, I was running that site when it was pretty dark in the Grizzlies Twitter and blogosphere. It was not the best of times. And Woj covered those things as well.
Yeah. And everyone, when they hear my example of one of my favorite Grizzlies Woj bombs, you're probably thinking it's been since I covered the team, right? Like
2022, you're a student of Grizz partner. I expect more from you.
But yeah, I got a throwback for you, and you're gonna remember this, Joe Mullinax, and a lot of people will. But let's go back to winter. It was during the 2018-2019 time frame. And the title of this Woj bomb, all I got saying you'll remember is Which Brooks. And that is the memory from that is Joe. You might be wondering, why did Damichael just pick out that one in particular? Well, I remember exactly where I was. I remember exactly what I was doing because I was a college senior and I was back in Memphis on winter break. The Tri-State Defender, local paper here in Memphis. I had interned there the previous summer after my junior year, and they allowed me to come back. They say, hey, you know, you did a good job in the summer, so winter break, you can come cover all the Grizzlies games you want. What? College kid, I can come cover the Grizzlies? Yeah. So I'm just at the Grizzlies game, eating a little popcorn, writing about the game or whatever, and the trade breaks, and, you know, everyone's scrambling like, the Grizzlies, like, it's for a second, people thought it was going to be Dillon Brooks. And this is, Joe, again, there are a lot of things you could attest to here. This is when Dillon Brooks was pretty much franchise cornerstone territory at this point. And it was either the trade was going to be for Dillon Brooks or Marshawn Brooks. And as we all know, that's a huge difference. So I think
massive difference.
The Suns were on the receiving end. And I remember seeing just the Suns fan base like, wow, we're getting Dillon Brooks. Like, we're getting Dillon Brooks. And Grizzlies fans were like, no, they're talking about Marshawn Brooks. They got to be talking about Marshawn Brooks because the return was not enough to yield. And Woj was just firing away. Like it was Woj. I remember John Gambadoro, who's a radio host out there in Phoenix, was the one who was saying, it's Marshawn Brooks. And then you just saw all these people go just watching the shift from Dillon to Marshawn in real time after, you know, a Grizzlies game. Like the reporters, we are literally at the game, after the game, while this is happening. It was a very interesting time. I was there in person, and you know, you just remembering that, it's something I'll never forget. That is an all-time Woj bump for me for sure.
The nice thing about X or Twitter is as long as they're not deleted, you can go back and relive these things. And I just looked it up as you were talking about it. Memphis and Phoenix finally talked directly, realized there was confusion on which Brooks was in deal, and Memphis refuses to include Dillon over Marshawn. Include Marshawn over Dillon. The Grizzlies are out. Suns, Wizards would need to do the deal directly. And then even after that clarification, which is it confuses me even, Marshawn Brooks was the one that Memphis wanted to trade. The Phoenix Suns wanted Dillon, and the Grizzlies insisted that they wanted it to be Marshawn. So one of the best jokes at the end of it all, and again, this is a very long stream of consciousness from Woj. Like you said, he fired off a lot of good ones on this night, Washington believes it was told Dillon Brooks in conversations with Memphis. The Grizzlies insist that they told Washington it was Marshawn. A rival GM texted Woj and said, maybe Washington can put Scott Brooks in there if there has to be a Brooks in the deal.
That's an all-timer. That's not even an all-time Grizzlies Woj bump. That's an all-time Woj bump, period. Like that is one of the best ones right there. I mean, we were scrambling that day.
Yeah,
like, it was
crazy.
Because it's a big difference. Like, again,
massive difference.
Real OG Grizzlies fans will remember how high in regard Dillon Brooks was at that time. Like, you weren't going to let Dillon Brooks go. So it was, and Marshawn Brooks wasn't even really playing. So it was like he was kind of like a throw-in type of guy. So you're talking about a guy who's potential franchise cornerstone and another guy who could be a potential throw-in, like completely different levels here. It was wild. It was wild. I'll never forget it. I'm a college senior, and I'm like, I don't know what to write. I don't know what to do. I'm like, look, I'm looking up all the insiders, seeing what they're saying. It was a wild time, but I enjoyed it. You know, it was good experience for sure.
Shout out to Adrian Wojnarowski, literally one of the greatest to ever do this type of work as a reporter. Represented himself well. I had limited interactions with Woj. You probably saw him more there than I did, partner. But the once or twice when I was covering the team there in Memphis that he may have walked by me, he was always polite, seemed to have it on, his head on straight. A really professional guy who did the work right. And his retirement announcement, I thought, was really professionally done, just kind of acknowledging the amount of work it takes to do what he does, and being ready to be done with that. That's a level of self-awareness that I think we can all aspire to. So,
and I'll say one more thing on him, like with a lot of those reporters who are at the national level and who reach a certain level of notoriety and things like that, you never know how they're going to react. But with Woj, every time I was around him in person, he had an understanding of the importance of local media. He told me, like, I walked up to him very first time we saw him. It was at the ESPN All Access. Remember when everyone was in town? So Woj was in
Grizzlies
town.
Day.
Yeah. And Woj was in town. I go up to him. We talked for a little bit, and before I even can really introduce myself, he's like, "I know you. I read your stuff." And like he follows me on X. Like he's one of those old school guys who understands that, hey, I'm not on the ground in Memphis as much as these local reporters. The local guys are going to tell the stories that need to be told with deep detail. And if you're a national reporter, you read the local reporters when you go to those towns to kind of get a better idea of the fervor of those teams. And he was a guy who, from my understanding, he respected our work here. And, very appreciative of the conversations I had, for sure.
That's amazing. A lot of good stuff there. So shout out to Woj. Congratulations on a great career and enjoy your retirement, I guess. It's crazy that being the GM for a basketball team at the college level is seen as a retirement job.
Man.
I guess only for Adrian Wojnarowski, right? That guy's pretty crazy. So congratulations to him. A well-deserved retirement from media, from reporting. And we wish him the best. Again, I'm gonna turn off those notifications someday, but not anytime soon. It's too soon. It's too early. I'm not ready for it. But congratulations to Woj. Wish him the very best, of course. This episode of Locked On Grizzlies is brought to you by Gametime. Big fan of Gametime here on Locked On Grizzlies. I love going to live events. I know Damichael does as well, with family, friends, whether it's a sporting event, a concert, a theater production, comedy show. I love making memories with folks that I care about at these types of things, and I love using the Gametime app to do so. It is amazing, this Gametime app, with a wonderful all-in top pricing option. You have to select the option. You have to toggle it on, but if you do so, you see the total cost up front with no surprise fees at checkout. You can get a panoramic view of your seat in the app before you buy it, and you also get the lowest price guarantee thanks to Gametime, or they will credit you 110% of the difference. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Gametime. Another icon in NBA reporting circles. Again, I subscribe to a lot of these newsletters. I mentioned Tom Ziller a few times. I subscribe to the Marc Stein line, Substack as well. And it was an interesting dynamic because Mark is pretty interactive with his Substack followers, and he has an opportunity where people get a chance to rank the conference, preseason predictions, that sort of thing. And it compares to what his personal rankings are. And one of the biggest differences this year, Damichael, between Mark's Western Conference and his readers' Western Conference was the Memphis Grizzlies. Marc Stein has them as the 12, which would be decisively out of the play-in entirely in the Western Conference. That would be an abject failure, in my opinion, of the season. The audience, his audience, has them 6th, which I don't agree with, but that's much less egregious, right? If you think the Memphis Grizzlies are going to be the 6th seed and I think they're going to be the 4 seed, what's that? A difference of 2 or 3 games? You're not really going to
if that
put your nose up at that in a very competitive Western Conference. So I'm curious, partner. Marc Stein is as tuned into the NBA as anybody, not named Adrian Wojnarowski. How do you see that disconnect? I know he's very connected to Dallas, and that was kind of my first cynical thought. Maybe he views them differently because he saw them, in fairness, covering the Mavericks. Maybe he has a higher view of Dallas and the other Southwestern teams. I know he's high on San Antonio, comparatively speaking to others. How do you kind of gauge it? It doesn't have to be a breakdown of Marc Stein, maybe just an overall thought exercise. How do you come to the conclusion that a Grizzlies team that, when healthy, two of the last 3 seasons, was the number 2 seed in the Western Conference? How do you come to the conclusion that they're going to be 12th this season, going into the year as healthy as they've been in some time?
Joe, and I know I'm still young in this business, but I want to say this. Whenever I decide to retire, hang it up, or whatever the case may be, I want people to say, Damichael Cole, every time he spoke with logic. Like, there was always reasoning behind why he said certain things. Now, with that being said, the Grizzlies, I've said time and time again, I am high on the Grizzlies this year. Like you say, 4, I've been roughly in that same range, 4, 3, potentially even 2, like in that top 5.
And as I've mentioned recently, some people like Tom Ziller have the Grizzlies as high as 1 in the West.
Exactly.
So it's not like we're just being homers. Other people
not at all. And that's why I say this. That's why I say bringing the reason to it, because I'm not just throwing it out. The Grizzlies are going to do this, they're going to do that. No, the reasoning comes from the depth. If you go back to the Grizzlies' 250-win seasons, what you saw was quality depth in the starting group and quality guys. When Jaren Jackson Jr. was out, Kyle Anderson could come in. DeAnthony Melton could start in a pinch. Tyus Jones, we talked about his starting record, at the point guard spot in a recent episode and things like that. So you had those type of guys. Now, when you want to talk about the idea of the Grizzlies being 12, clearly the easy reason is to say, I don't trust that they're going to be healthy. But the number one thing in predictions is you can't predict availability. You can't predict that. You don't know which player is going to get hurt on any team. You don't know how many. The Thunder had historically good health last season. The Nuggets the year before, when they won the championship, had historically good health. And then the year after, the Nuggets, Jamal Murray, had some injuries, and other players, in the lineup. So you can't really predict that stuff. So as it comes to the Grizzlies being the 12th, this is the only, and even in this case, you have to predict injury to me. The only way that I could see the Grizzlies logically falling to 12 is if Ja Morant's availability is questionable somewhere in there, because that is the one position, as I've said in the past, where if you have to bring in a Scottie Pippen Jr. or Derrick Rose to start at point guard, or you just move Desmond Bane over and bring in Luke Kennard in the starting lineup or something, however you do it, that is the one position, or even Marcus Smart at the point guard. That is the one position that has the most uncertainty based on what we saw in the past. We saw the Grizzlies start slow last season with that starting group. Outside of that, Joe, I don't know. Because guess what? If you tell me, Jaren Jackson Jr. is going to miss 2 weeks, he's going to miss 6-7 games. You throw Sonny Aldama in the starting lineup. I think the Grizzlies can tread water. I think they can go 3-3 over that stretch, depending on who they're playing. Maybe 4-2 if they catch some breaks. If you do the same thing with Desmond Bane's out 2 weeks, small little ankle sprain or whatever the case may be. 2 weeks, he misses 6 games. Throw Luke Kennard in the starting lineup. You still get the shooting. And look, Ja Morant and Jaren Jackson Jr. just got to take more shots, which they probably want to do anyway, and they can't do because you got to give Dez his. So now, okay, instead of trying to make sure I get my 20, you get your 20, you get your 20, how about I get my 25 now? and oh, Ja, you can get your 30. Like, it's our time to shine. So with that being said, Ja, if he misses 2 weeks, that's the difference. And the Western Conference, I expect it to be so competitive that if you have a star player who's irreplaceable, that misses a substantial amount of time, it's the difference between you being a top seed and like it's the difference from 1 to 5, probably. It's the difference from 5 to 8, probably. It's the difference from 8 to 12 in this case. So that's the only thing I can think of logically, Joe. Like, other than that, like, if the Grizzlies, if you tell me, like I said on a recent episode, if all Grizzlies starters are playing 60-plus games, no way. I'm on the record. No way.
They will be a top 6 seed if they're all playing 60 games. Like that. That's a lock to me. I don't see how they could possibly be worse than that, given their track record, given how productive these guys have been. The fact it's 3 top 40 players in the league, it's just not logical. I think he had his Mavericks blue colored glasses on a little bit for that one. Let Damichael and I know in the comments. Hit us up. Do you think it's as ridiculous as we do, having them 12th in the Western Conference? Again, it's not like we're crazy. There's other people that are higher on Memphis than we are. Seeing them be ranked that low was kind of surprising. I doubt that they're going to be ranking them that low on Locked On NBA, although Nick Angstad is a Mavericks guy. I know that.
You better watch Nick now.
Between him and Jackson Gatlin, they do a phenomenal job, and others, of course, cycling through, hosting Locked On NBA. Check it out after this show. Make it your second listen, your second watch. Great analysis, news, all sorts of coverage from east to west, up and down, north and south, talking NBA basketball. Make sure you're checking out Locked On NBA after this episode of Locked On Grizzlies. Speaking of this episode of Locked On Grizzlies, today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. We talk about FanDuel a lot here on Locked On Grizzlies. We're going to continue to, because FanDuel is awesome. After all, they are America's #1 sportsbook. We're also going to keep talking about them because they have an amazing deal right now that's a little bit different than anything they've done before. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then with a YouTube TV-based plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you're going to need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel anytime. NBA basketball is about to start back up, but the NFL is in full swing. Make FanDuel a part of your NFL Sunday and Saturday and Monday, whenever they're playing experience. Just visit FanDuel.com right now and download America's #1 sportsbook. Damichael, we'll get out of here on this episode, this Thursday edition of the show. We keep hearing about this new look offense, right? On yesterday's program, Jaron was talking about that in your last conversation with him. He's excited for everyone to see it. I don't mean to be a Debbie Downer, because I feel like I've been fairly positive recently here on Locked On Grizzlies. I have a reputation amongst Grizzlies fans that sometimes I can be a bit of a negative Nancy, right? A negative Nate, however you want to phrase me. I'm going to be a bit negative here, or maybe a realistic Ron. I'm concerned that we're hyping up this new look offense. There hasn't been any major acquisition, right? Like Zach Edey is essentially the major acquisition. But the reality is Ja Morant, Desmond Bane, Marcus Smart, Jaren Jackson Jr., Vince Williams Jr., Luke Kennard, Santi Aldama, Brandon Clark. Like, if you want to talk about Clark as an injury return acquisition, I can maybe hear that. But you're essentially dealing with the same talent, right? The same group of guys. They might have gotten better. You hope that they've improved. But how much different can this roster and this scheme realistically look when the talent is almost the same as what they had coming back from last season?
Here's the difference. And I agree with you to a certain degree here. With the starting lineup, it's going to look the same. It's reality. Like I've said it a bunch of times, you can draw up the cutest, the flashiest play in the world. But at the end of the day, if you look at the Grizzlies' projected starting lineup right now, Ja Morant is a below average 3-point shooter. Marcus Smart, historically, below average NBA 3-point shooter. Jaren Jackson Jr., below average NBA 3-point shooter to this point. Can any of them be better? It's possible, but we're talking about what we've seen up to this point. So you're talking about 3 guys in one lineup. If you throw Zach Edey in that lineup, he's probably not even going to shoot 3-pointers. Like, so now you got 4.
He shot 1-3 in college, and it was like an accident. It barely went in.
So you're talking about a lineup where it's going to be pretty much what I used to say it was the last couple years when the team was healthy in those 50-win seasons. Desmond Bane, save us. We need you to. It's 10 seconds left in the game. We need a 3-pointer. Let's get Des free. If we can't get Des free, we better hope. And Marcus Smart can knock down some open threes. We've seen it, And I think if you look at Marcus Smart's catch and shoot numbers, they're much better than the off the dribble 3-pointers and those. So I have an idea of how he can look better as a 3-pointer. But now that we got Joe's negative Nancy side out of the way. Now I'm going to switch the tune a little bit. Here's the difference. The difference is, have we seen the Grizzlies with a full season of Luke Kennard yet?
No, we haven't.
Have we seen the Grizzlies with a full season of Vince Williams yet?
No, we have not.
We have not. And look, even to a lesser degree, we've not seen the Grizzlies with a full season of Derrick Rose or Scottie Pippen Jr. Both of those guys in small sample sizes. Derrick Rose is much bigger sample size. Derrick Rose has been a much better 3-point shooter in the last 3-4 years of his NBA career. Scottie Pippen Jr., it looked like an outlier to me, but we'll see if we'll see what happens, because if you look at his G League numbers through his first 2 years in the G League, he was 33% from 3-point range. All of a sudden he gets to the Grizzlies, he's 40% from 3-point range. And then in Summer League, it tracked. He was a very good 3-point shooter in Summer League as well. So if you're saying Derrick Rose and or Scottie Pippen Jr. will give you above average, because the league average is around 36%. Derrick Rose gave you that last season. If Derrick Rose is giving you league average or above 3% shooting, Luke Kennard is giving you elite 3-point shooting. Vince Williams is giving you above average 3-point shooting. That's 3 guys right there. Then you throw Santi Aldama in there. He was below league average last year, but of all these guys that I've said was below league average, this is the guy who you can eye test it with the most. This is the eye test guy right here. This is the guy I look at, Joe, and I say, I've seen him in practice make 10 threes in a row in his sleep. And you look at the mechanics, and you see him playing FIBA, right? And he's knocking 3-pointers down with zero hesitation. Santi's due for positive. He's due to get back closer to 36, 37%. I think he's just due at this point. Like, he clearly is a decent 3-point shooter. His numbers have not kind of shown that yet to this point. So with all that being said, even if you say, Santi, he's going to still stay around, hover around 34%, Luke Kennard and Vince Williams should get enough minutes to where the Grizzlies become a better 3-point shooting team. How does that factor into the closing lineup is going to be the big question. So overall, I think the Grizzlies shooting numbers are probably going to be a little bit better. But the question is going to be, we're going to have to dig deeper into the stats, Joe. It's going to be last 4 minutes of the game. First 6 minutes of the game. What are the Grizzlies' 3-point shooting percentage numbers? Because that's going to be when Ja, Dez, Marcus, and Jaren are more than likely taking the shots. Or unless you throw a Vince Williams in the closing lineups, or you throw in a Luke Kennard in the closing lineups, like, all of that has to be figured out. But that is what it comes down to me. It's very simple. You got more shooting than you've ever had off the bench now. Vince Williams is going to be a plus 3-point shooter. He showed it in the G League. He showed it with the Grizzlies. I'm not worried about him being a bad 3-point shooter at all. I'm not worried about Luke Kennard being a bad 3-point shooter at all. I'm really not even worried about Derrick Rose being a bad 3-point shooter at this point. Santi, I feel like he's going to be decently better. With that being said, you have better shooting in your second group than your starting group.
I just admire how much you love Derrick Rose.
I knew you were going to say that. I knew you were going to say that.
I need to find
Joe, look at the numbers.
I have a wife that I adore. I have 3 beautiful children.
You're going to have these people thinking that Derrick Rose is like, I'm like his just personal fanboy.
Man.
Like,
I don't know.
The numbers, Joe. Look at the numbers. Look at Derrick Rose 3-point shooting numbers.
I think
what you see.
It won't be tomorrow because I'm off tomorrow. But I think next week maybe we do need to. We haven't done a trial in a while. Maybe we need to do the trial of Derrick Rose, and you can be his defendant, and I can be the prosecution. We might be onto something there next week. But no, I think that you make fair points. We haven't this talent is the same, but we haven't seen the combinations, right? The health has been an issue. We only had 9-game sample size of Ja and Dez and Jaren alongside Marcus Smart. I beat the drum. One of the few things I was right about last year. Marcus Smart is not a point guard. He is a combo guard who has to play off ball. And if you use him in that way, he is a good NBA basketball player still. And I think that is going to be really important as well, to keep that Health is the name of the game. And that's really the biggest X factor for this Grizzlies team. If they stay healthy, I think the offense will look improved simply because the personnel is actually on the floor to kind of match what Taylor Jenkins and company want to do, regardless of the wrinkles that these new coaches bring to the forefront. As I mentioned a moment ago, on our next episode of Locked On Grizzlies, it'll be a Friday edition of the show. I will not be tagging along on that program. Damichael will close out the week for us. I did purposefully, partner, you and I talk about the show a little bit in terms of planning before we record. I left off the Ja Morant plus 3,000 MVP odds. He is currently 10th among all potential people to bet on for MVP. He is 10th. He's moving up the list, partner. That might be a good thing for you to touch on. Ja Morant fever might be picking back up a little bit as the season approaches.
Yeah, I think Mike Miller's "How soon do they forget" comments might have woken some people up a little bit. But yeah, I'll also be with the Grizzlies team later today. So potential interviews and some insight on some people, maybe even Coach Taylor Jenkins. So we'll have something from that as well for Friday's show.
You should ask Taylor Jenkins, and you can say it's from Joe Mullinax of Locked On Grizzlies. I'm sure he knows exactly who I am. You should ask him how he feels about being ranked 17th as a head coach in the National Basketball Association. Yeah. I'm sure he'll answer that question very appropriately and not be annoyed at all that somebody asked him.
I don't think he'll be annoyed, but knowing Taylor, like he isn't Taylor isn't your box office quote. Dylan Brooks would light it up. Like I remember Ja Morant was asked about being ranked in the top 10 amongst NBA players a couple years ago, and he was like, "I want to be number one." Like, right. I don't know if that's going to be Taylor Jenkins's reaction, but I actually am interested because we don't ask Taylor Jenkins stuff like that. Me personally, the one thing that I love to talk to Taylor Jenkins about is the X and O stuff. Like he is where I get a lot of insight on how this team is going to, handle certain different things. He's good at that stuff, but he's coach speak. He can give you the old coach speak. So all the narrative storylines and all that's Taylor Jenkins ain't your guy. Yeah.
No, and unfortunately, that's my favorite part, as everybody that is an everydayer of Locked On Grizzlies knows. So, yes, Damichael's going to ask actual good questions, not the bad one that I just asked, and I'm sure he's going to have a great episode on Friday. I'll be listening. I'll be checking it out. Hopefully, you guys will as well. Thank you for being with us on this Thursday edition of the show. Make sure you're liking, commenting, rating, reviewing, subscribing, wherever you get podcasts. Again, Locked On Grizzlies is a proud member of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team each and every day. That means that we're on Apple, we're on Spotify, we're on Amazon, we're on YouTube. Subscribe in multiple places and make sure you take Damichael and I with you, whether you're in front of your computer, on your phone, driving in your car, getting a workout in. Make sure Locked On Grizzlies is your first listen or watch each and every day. Make sure Locked On NBA is your next listen as soon as we finish up here. They do a great job over at Locked On NBA. Make sure you're checking them out. Same places you can find Locked On Grizzlies, you can find Locked On NBA. For Damichael, I'm Joe. Stay locked in. Make sure you're hanging out with Damichael on Friday's episode. Lots of good content coming your way, as always, as we are now 5 days a week on Locked On Grizzlies. Season's coming.